Oh gosh, not for a long time.
Yeah.
I was far from being the most coordinated kid. I was never really into sports. Growing up until I hit high school, I ran track. But as far as kids around the neighborhood, they would play wiffle ball,
Yeah.
street football, stuff like that. And I would get in there and I'd play. I guess you could call it that. But not a lot of athletic ability, and anybody that could vouch for that, probably the one of the people that could vouch for it the most is my brother. My brother got absolutely all the athletic ability in the family.
Yeah.
Me, I could run like the wind, and that was about it. And
I've asked Jason about that. Jason's Mark's brother, by the way. Everybody listen. I've asked Jason about that, and he always has said that you were fast. You were a better runner than he was, and he has made mention. He's like, my brother's just uncoordinated.
I'm not.
Couldn't do much more than run.
I am not coordinated. You kind of need to know your strengths and your weaknesses, and I definitely knew mine. Funny story is I can tell you that in elementary school during recess we would play soccer a lot, and don't judge. But we'd play soccer a lot, and I remember going to my mom, and they had this sign-up sheet for soccer for the school, and I went to my mom, and I go, I think I want to play soccer. You'll break your neck. My mom even knew. Bless her heart, but yeah, she told me, you'll break your neck, and it was just like, oh, all right. So I never really got into sports. I don't know if it's a thing I'm not blaming you, Mom, but I don't know if it's a thing where maybe if she had allowed me to get into soccer at a younger age, maybe I would have kind of picked up some of that coordination. Obviously soccer is a lot of hand-eye coordination, foot coordination. There's a lot of footwork. I think maybe I could have gotten over that hump a little bit, but you know what? You play the cards that you're dealt. So, but I never really thought wrestling was a possibility for me because of the lack of athletic ability.
Yeah.
It wasn't until way later in life, which I don't know if you want me to go into this now or you want to wait a little bit as far as how I got into SCW and got my exposure into independent wrestling.
Oh, we can put that off for a minute.
Okay. But yeah, it wasn't until way later in life during that, those experiences that I really started thinking, you know what? There's a place for me in this. Not necessarily as a wrestler, but there's definitely a place for me in this. So.
Okay. Now, going back to the family a little bit, growing up, was it just you, Mom, and Jason? How was that dynamic?
Basically, the way it happened was my mom had me at a young age. My mom graduated from high school in 72. I was born in 73. And for the first few years, it was just me and my mom. We moved different places here and there. I think we had a spell living with my grandparents. Had a spell, a couple spells living in Rock Island in different areas. Eventually, my mom met a guy by the name of Virgil Adair, and she started dating him. And I remember I was probably 4 or 5. He moved us in with him in the trailer that he had out in Coal Valley, and so for the longest time they dated, and we lived with him. And he was very good to me, treated me very well growing up, and take me hunting, fishing, stuff like that, show me different things.
And at this point, your birth father was not a part of the picture? Or?
My birth father, from what I understand from my mom, my birth father wanted to come around and have a relationship with me. He would hang out with me a little bit on the weekends when I was a little kid. I don't have a lot of memories of this. And then she said all of a sudden he stopped. For whatever reason, he came around. She thought it had something to do possibly with the girl he was dating at the time, which actually, ironically, was a former friend of my mom's.
Huh.
But she thinks that she didn't want me in the picture, and so whatever. So for whatever reason, he stopped coming around. So yeah, for the longest time, the only father figure I really knew was Virgil. And then I remember it was probably, let me do the math here. It's like 9 and a half when I found out my mom was pregnant with my younger brother, which came as a surprise to everybody because Virgil, which we'll call him Tony because that's what everybody called him. Don't ask me how Virgil translates into Tony, but it does. But it was a surprise to everybody because Tony was told that he could never have kids.
Oh, wow.
So shortly thereafter that they found out that she was pregnant with my little brother, and so they decided to get married, and so then all of a sudden he actually became, officially my stepdad rather than just, a father figure.
Yeah.
And, so they got married, and so then when Jason was born, which Jason is 9.5 years younger than me, even after that point, it was always a situation I never felt like I was, was treated any different than him. And there was periods of time throughout that later after he had passed away, I tried to get back in touch with my dad on a couple different occasions, and it was brief, short-lived experiences where it's like maybe this is going somewhere else. Nope, psych, not happening. So when it comes down to it, that's until I was into my 20s. That was the experience I had as far as a father. So.
Okay. Well, so going from there into wrestling, was your mother like supportive of the idea, or did you kind of like, I don't know, I wouldn't say keep it secret from her, but we'll just go with that. Was she supportive of the idea, or did you kind of tell her when you were already like foot deep into the wrestling world?
Well, I didn't actually get into the wrestling world. Let me do the math here. I want to say I was right about 30 when I started delving into wrestling. So it wasn't one of those situations where I really had to run it by my mom and sell my mom on it.
Right.
I mean, as my mom's always, if you ask for advice or her feelings on something, she'll tell you and she'll support you. And if she feels like it's the right thing, she'll tell you if she doesn't agree with it.
Yeah.
But then she'll kind of butt out and let you kind of experience your life in your own way. So it was never anything I had to sell her on. I don't know if she completely understood it. I wouldn't say it was a surprise to her because she knew growing up how much I loved it for the longest time. So I would say that she was pretty supportive. It was but like I said, it was nothing I ever had to hide from her or keep a secret.
But for the most part, she saw it. Yeah, right.
Not a grown ass man, but a grown ass man.
Still a Billy Gunn fan, but
right.
Yeah. But so she could kind of see it coming down the pipe in just the fact that you were already such a wrestling fan as you were, that maybe getting into it more in an active manner is like, all right, I could kind of see that coming.
Well, it possibly could have caught her somewhat out of left field because I was into it all the way through high school. Then I left and I went into the Army. So I went to basic and everything. So when Raw really popped off and was running, and Nitro and some of those, I was at boot camp. I wasn't watching wrestling. I didn't have access to, the TV. To the TV and to some of that stuff. I might catch it occasionally here and there. But then later on, when I came back and I was in my early 20s, it was like all of a sudden I'm flipping channels and I'm seeing, actually I think a girl that I was kind of seeing at the time, her dad was watching WCW, and I remember getting caught up in the whole facet of the NWO thing with Sting and Sting and his new crow look. It's like, whoa, where the hell did this come from?
Right.
Just stuff like that. So there was a brief period that I'd kind of gotten away from it. Yeah. Not necessarily because I lost interest, just because the ability wasn't there. And then when it came back, it wasn't necessarily in the forefront of my mind to delve back into it.
You just had other stuff going on.
Right, just had other stuff going on. So I wouldn't say that she thought it was a foregone conclusion that it was going to happen.
Yeah.
I think it probably surprised her in a sense, but didn't, because she knew that I had loved it before. But I think
back then, wrestling wasn't everywhere that it is now. It wasn't on. We didn't have the internet at our fingertips with our cell phones and that sort of thing. It was more or less, you see wrestling every Monday or Thursday,
right?
Or at that point, was it just Thursday?
I want to say it was.
I mean, if Raw was just coming around, then Mondays were fresh.
Right, Mondays. Raw was on Mondays, and then I think Nitro was originally on Thursday nights, and then I think they moved it to Monday intentionally to go to head with Raw, if I remember correctly. Yeah. But I think if anybody were to ask my mom if she saw it coming, I graduated from high school. I weighed 120 pounds. I got into boot camp because I had a roll of quarters in my pocket. I think that's the only way I honestly made weight.
Yeah.
I was always a kid that could never put on any weight. It wasn't until later when I found beer and large amounts of fast food that happened. But in all seriousness, I think she probably was kind of the same way I was. He doesn't really have any athletic ability, and he's very slender. I don't think she would have expected me to go the direction I went.
Now, was SCW the first place that you went to, or was that like just kind of where you ended up?
No, actually, I'd gotten married, and the woman that I was married to, knew that I was kind of into the wrestling thing, and she'd actually kind of got hooked on it a little bit too. And she had Metal Gentleman. That sounds shady. She was in a program where she interacted with a lot of other people, and I'm not going to delve into those issues.
Okay.
But one of the people that she met through that program was a really big, really intimidating guy with a heart of gold. His name was Vinny. And she was like, I think he showed up to one of their meetings, and he was wearing like a wrestling shirt. And I think the topic had come up, oh yeah, my husband's into wrestling, this and that, blah, blah, blah. She thought it would be a good idea to introduce me to him.
Yeah.
So we got to talking and whatever, and he told me about this wrestling promotion up in LaSalle, and he's like, yeah, they've got all these wrestlers, they got this guy and that guy, and he's rattling off all these names and his own description of these people, and I'm like, I have no idea who these people are.
Right.
And he's like, yeah, they got a show, and they're going to have Bam Bam Bigelow, and I'm like, well, what?
Right.
Bam Bam Bigelow, huh? And automatically caught my attention. He's like, yeah, we should go, and, we did some research and stuff, and I found out exactly how close LaSalle was, because I think right now, it's only 45, if I remember correctly, it's only about 45 minutes, an hour drive.
Yeah.
From here. And so we went up there and checked it out. And it was cool. It was really cool. I mean, it was the epitome of what people used to, and some people still look at as independent wrestling. Small venue, some of the guys, not real huge guys. There were some guys that were built, some guys, smaller, stuff like that. But I just remember just the presentation, the way the show was booked. There was guys coming out talking smack, running their mouth, just trash talking, and just doing the stuff that I remember watching, like Bobby the Brain Heenan and Jim Cornette, and even some of the wrestlers doing and stuff. And I'm like, wait a minute, I can do that.
Right.
I've done this my whole life as far as freaking opening my mouth and saying something that's going to piss somebody off. I might as well have some fun with it.
Put it to use.
And so I went and talked to the promoter at the time. His name was Jay Repsol. And actually, funny story was he had been in a Iron Man tables match, or was it 2 out of 3? I think it was 2 out of 3 falls tables match with this guy named Machine. He was considerably bigger than him. Jay was not a wrestler. He was just a promoter. Did a little wrestling here and there, but I want to say during this match his head took a little bit of a beating, so he was a little bit loopy. So when I went and talked to him, I had asked one of the guys. Intermission, I'd asked one of the workers. I said, I caught him outside the locker room. I go, hey, I said, is the promoter available? He's like, yeah, give me a minute. So we went and got the promoter. The promoter came out, and I said, hey, I'm really interested in doing this, blah blah blah. And he's like, oh, submit me a video. See if you can put something together as far as video package. Kind of gave me the whole rigmarole about, come and paying your dues, setting up the ring, this and that. So I remember setting up the video, putting together the video package and taking it to him. And he was like, oh, it's good. And I did a lot of talking at that time. I had just kind of started to delve into this character that I called Masterpiece, Mark Storm. And actually, I don't think I even had the Masterpiece at the time. It was just Mark Storm. And it was kind of a combination of like a Ric Flair, Mr. Perfect type character, but as a manager. And did a lot of talking about being perfect and so much better than you and this and that. And I remember one of his feedbacks was that it wasn't necessarily the most original gimmick.